Supercell just released its most recent patch notes, and honestly, I have a lot of questions, and a lot of these just simply don't feel very right to me. So today I will tell what emergency changes I feel like Brawl Stars desperately needs. Hope you enjoy, and let's start with our first brawler, Bull. Honestly, Bull, it is just a very mediocre brawler, and he would be for sure in the F tier if it was not for his hypercharge. And the fact that Daryl got a buff as well, it doesn't help him out a lot, as you can imagine. So to start off, his HP will be increased from 10,000 to 10,800, and because of that, his first gadget heal would be increased from 2,000 to 2,200. So honestly, these two buffs are just, the second one is just because of how the gadgets now work in percentages of the health. But mainly the HP buff, it is because you can't just kill the bull so easily. Like, for real, all of the tanks just feel like they survive more, and Bull, he just dies, very simple. And there is a good reason for people using his second star power, I can guarantee you that. And now that we discussed that, let's talk about his hypercharge. Honestly, it takes too much to get it. It's the only really good thing about his kit, I believe, and because of that, you should get it a bit more often throughout the match. So the charge rate would be increased from 35% to 45%. So now, instead of needing 2.85 supers, you instead only need 2.22. This would obviously help you a lot because you would just get the hypercharge so much faster. And on top of all of these, the hypercharge super, it's now interruptible, it's not interruptible. That means that if you get stunned or like knocked back or I don't know, silenced maybe, you would just simply resist that. You're immune to crowd control while you are on your hypercharge super. This would in a certain way really guarantee you the kills in case you super into someone with the hypercharge. So now instead of like, I don't know, maybe having an interruptible ability like Fang's second gadget or Frank's super or Maisie's second gadget, now you would just need to run away because otherwise you would be brutally murdered. Next on the list we have El Primo, and this is a very simple one. I want his hypercharge rate to be brutally increased from 30% to 45%. Honestly, his hypercharge is just not that good. His hypercharge, it is mediocre at the best. Like, you can only really get the stat increases. Pulling people to the middle does not even make sense if your super is not larger, which would now also be. Because they in the Brawl Talk, I still remember that drastic day where I was severely disappointed, where now they told that the super would be larger, but in reality it was not, which was very disappointing to all of the people that bought with gems El Primo's hypercharge. Just saying. So hopefully with these two buffs, El Primo's hypercharge would just be at least viable because his hypercharge is just so bad, and El Primo is not really that good in the meta right now, so these two buffs together should really help him out. Next on the list we have Rico. I am so tired of this guy. Like, I already had enough of him. For real. I want him gone. Especially the first gadget, please. So to start off, the damage would be reduced from 896 to 720, which is the same damage as the super. His gadget is literally, you click on the button and whoever is close to you dies. What a great gadget concept, don't you think? Like, honestly, it's just so stupidly broken. I have no idea how is this a thing on the game, to be completely honest. On top of that, I want the hypercharge bonus damage to be reduced from plus 25% to plus 15%. His hypercharge is also good because you just make the super deal tons of damage. It just deals too much damage, the hypercharge super. The bonus rebound range, it is already so strong, and you're telling me that this guy also needs a 25% bonus damage. You're out of your damn mind, honestly. Next on the list we have Daryl, and I know he just got a buff, and that's exactly why he needs a nerf. I know, he's finally meta after like thousands of years, like, it just feels surreal, but I severely underestimated how strong the double super would be. This guy can literally be used everywhere. When I first saw that he would get 2 supers, I thought that he would still not be good in like sniper maps, for example, or that he would still have problems in hot zone. But the double super just means double knockback, and it can just cover so much area if you just use both the dashes forward. It is absolutely crazy. Both the gadgets help quite a fair bit at the same time, and once you connect at least one bounce to one of your enemies, and even if you die, if you shoot the 3 ammos, you have like almost 80% of your super charged back. That cannot be a thing. So I would just do these tiny 2 nerfs to compensate his new broken state. To start off, his HP would be slightly reduced from 10,600, and his damage per shell shock would be also slightly reduced from 480 to 460. We cannot forget that Daryl can pretty much deal 5,000 damage in one shot. Like, if he'll obviously land all of the shots, which is pretty hard, but not if you just knock your enemy back with your own knockback. It is very easy to connect those shots after a super, and the damage nerf should help kinda fix a little bit that. And at the same time, the HP nerf should just make it a little bit less hard to kill him, because with all of those shields from the first star power, it just gets really annoying really fast. But he is also very tanked just by existing, because the super itself also gives him 50% shield. So hopefully with these 2 tiny nerfs, Daryl is not overly broken. Penny. Apparently, she's back in that time zone where she receives a bunch of useless buffs. Like, I know that her past damage buff actually kinda helps, but Penny has just been suffering for so long, and she's not getting the help that she deserves. So, to start off, her cannon reload time, giving an actual good buff to the barrel, to the cannon. She also has a barrel actually, now that I think about it. So now the cannon only takes 2.5 seconds between each shot. This makes so that the cannon covers a lot more area, because that also means that you always have one burning zone, which would make the cannon itself a lot better. The cannon does not need more HP, because the cannon it's not supposed to be used like Penny's turrets. It just is not how it works. You use the cannon because you want it to shoot people over time and cover area, to getting area control. So that's why it makes almost nearly 0 sense for the cannon to receive a HP buff. I mean, if you use the second star power, it makes a bit more sense, but still, very weird. On top of that, Penny's actual reload time will be reduced from 2 seconds to 1.8 seconds. I had no idea Penny had such a long reload time, to be honest, and this explains why it just feels so hard to deal consistent damage with her. With this buff, you would just be able to shoot more projectiles more often, and also people always need to be a tiny bit more aware of the coins, because if you can shoot more, that also means more coins, and hopefully with these 2 buffs, Penny would finally be at least somewhere viable in the meta. Next on the list we have Frank, and honestly, the nerfs were just simply not enough, like, not even close. To start off, I want his HP to be further reduced from 13,400 to 12,600. And no, I'm not gonna reduce the HP of the second star power, actually, even more. I will increase it from 1,340 to 1,400. That means that actually if you use this star power, you would have the original HP that Frank had before he received the nerf. And actually, both of the HP nerfs combined would mean that Frank would have received a total of a 10% HP nerf, which honestly feels completely fair considering how powerful he is right now. On top of that, his first star power would have some reductions. Its power overall would be reduced from an additional 50% damage to an additional 40% damage. On top of that, its duration would be reduced from 12 seconds to 10 seconds. That first star power is just so strong, it just really is. And finally, to make sure that we're all on the same page, Frank's hypercharge would have its rate reduced from 45%, which is actually very incredible, to 30%. So now, instead of needing 2.22 supers, you would now need 3.33 supers. I don't think that the hypercharge should cost 4 supers like most people do, because sometimes it is kinda hard to get your supers as a Frank if you don't know how to cycle them very well. So I feel like 3.33 supers is just around the good place for his hypercharge, mainly because he already received a lot of other nerfs that I feel like will also make Frank severely worse in the meta. But hopefully with all of these changes, Frank will actually be balanced. Next we have Nani, and I honestly don't play her a lot, but her hypercharge just needs some buffs. To start off, the hypercharge rate would be increased from 30% to 40%, so now instead of needing 3.33 supers, you would instead need 2.5 supers. Nani does not cycle her super that much, and the hypercharge clearly has no idea about that. And also, the hypercharge duration freezes while you are using the super. You either completely waste the value of the hypercharge on using the super, or you just don't even get bonus damage to the actual super if I'm correct. Which honestly just absolutely sucks. The hypercharge has a very hard time to even reach it, and its power it is absolutely useless. So at least with these two changes it would be somewhat easier to get, and you would not be penalized by using the hypercharge super. Come on. Gale, another one that needs zero explanations in my opinion. Most people don't know this, but before Gale had his multiple projectiles, his hypercharge super used to deal around 1400 damage. Now, because the super damage was actually fixed, now the hypercharge super damage it is 1800. So actually, changing the projectiles and increasing the damage of the super was a very big mistake, so let's revert that, where now the super damage would be reduced from 1640 to 1220. And on top of that, the second star power slow duration would be reduced from half a second to 0.4 seconds. First, the super damage nerf. Gale was actually starting to become good with the super bonus damage like before he got the bug, like 1220. Gale was actually starting to rise up a little bit, and because he now also has the hypercharge, he doesn't need any more damage on his super because the super already deals a very decent amount of damage, especially because it goes through walls and it is very easy to land. The second star power, you might be thinking, how does 0.1 seconds make it different? Well, think in this way, it is 20% less time that you're slowed. So think about that, and this star power making it 20% less annoying, and honestly that would be so good. You know what else would be so good? If you subscribe to the channel. Honestly, I have so many ideas, and just wait until I implement them in an actual video, it will be crazy. You clearly don't want to miss that, so click on the subscribe button, click on the bell, click on the like, share, do all of the things at the same time if possible. Hope you enjoy, and thank you. Next on the list we have Ash, and I think it is about time for him to receive an actual buff. Just saying. To start off, his rage gained by receiving damage, it will be increased from 125% to 100%. This means that instead of needing to lose 125% of your HP to be fully rage, now you only need to lose 100% of your HP. On top of that, the first gadget heal will be increased from 3240 to 4320. So now you heal up around 40% of your HP if my math is mathing. And honestly, for what you sacrifice, like you sacrifice all of your anger for just a third of the HP, it just does not feel a good trade honestly right now. And on top of that, a final buff is that his his rage bar now only starts decaying if it doesn't fill up within 2 seconds. In case you don't know, lose attack for example, it freezes you. But the frozen thing, it only starts decaying if he does not land you his super or his basic attack for 2 seconds. So now Ash would kinda also have this treatment. If his rage doesn't fill up, so if he does not land an attack or get hit by one, his rage will actually start decaying. This also means that it will be so much easier to keep the rage intact, and also means as a whole that the rage overall takes an additional 2 seconds to actually start decaying, which is also a very good buff. Hopefully with these buffs, Ash will actually be able to be a lot more time raged, rather than just needing to kill himself in order to be raged. Next on the list we have Sam, and this is a very simple one. His first star power, it will now be a passive. This will be done eventually, and I have zero doubts on it. Second of all, his new first star power will be that his super would now stun the enemies for half a second. I don't think that this would be too much, but I feel like it would be very noticeable, honestly. So I feel like it would be a good overall star power. And on top of that, his second gadget, the explosion, now also deals damage. And it also charges the super. And yes, that also means that you can receive double the damage and receive double the charge rate by only hitting one person. With these two changes, hopefully Sam will cycle his super a bit more often, and also he'll just be able to stay more in battle because now his first star power will be a passive, because he really needs that passive to happen. Next on the list we have Maisie, and this will be a very simple one. I want her hypercharge rate to be increased from 40% up to 50%. I don't want any changes to the supercharge or recharge rate. I feel like actually right now the balance between those two, it is somewhere good. Like, yes, it does take a long time to get your first super, but if you cycle them well, you can just keep cycling those supers very well. It's just a very good gimmick overall. But the hypercharge still takes way too long in my opinion, especially since she got the charge rate nerf. It has just never been the same thing. So now the hypercharge only needs 2 supers instead of 2.5. It is a very tiny buff, but I feel like Maisie, if she gets a little too big of a buff, she might become broken again, which is not what I want at all. Next on the list we have Hank, and I want these 2 buffs. Now he has the tank trait. I have been asking this for like ages. I get that it doesn't make much sense getting the super by receiving damage because his super literally heals him, but at the same time he just needs it, otherwise he will suck forever. And on top of that, I want the super cost to be decreased from 4 full bubbles to 3 full bubbles. Fun fact, this was actually how his original charge rate was. Just saying, maybe you should have kept that. And honestly, I feel like that's all he needs, because with those 2 changes, like, you will just cycle your super so much more and just heal so much more. And I feel like with these 2 changes, Hank would finally be a balanced brawler. Please! Next on the list we have Larry and Laurie, and I want kind of a tiny rework about him. Since Laurie got the damage nerf, I feel like Laurie didn't even have any impact on the Larry kit. Like, if Larry and Laurie are broken right now, it's because of Larry and his second star power, which is also another very broken thing. And honestly, Larry just needs this tiny rework to make Larry worse, but Laurie better. Remember that overall, I'm expecting this to be a nerf, just for the record. So to start off, let's start with the big thing. Larry's damage would be reduced by 15%, from 1400 per explosion to 1190 per explosion. With this, Larry would no longer deal as much damage. He would deal around 2400, which is less than most throwers, but it's still somewhere decent actually. Laurie's damage, on the other hand, would be increased by 50%, from 300 per projectile to 450 per projectile. This is actually somewhere in the middle before Laurie's damage got brutally nerfed. And also, Laurie's super cost or recharge rate, now instead of needing 37 projectiles to get the super back, now you would only need 25 projectiles. And saying only, it's honestly being extremely nice. You will instead need 25 projectiles. On top of that, the second gadget heal will be reduced from 25% to 16.7%. So now, instead of healing 1500 HP, you would instead only heal 1000 HP. Honestly, the heal is also pretty good, but to just give it another tiny buff, the first gadget, now it would only last 5 seconds, so you would not be perma-stuck with a weapon. And on top of that, both of the twins would immediately reload 1 ammo. Hopefully with these changes, not only the gadget choice becomes slightly harder, but Larry becomes weaker and Laurie actually becomes necessary for the kit to work. Because right now, Laurie is not necessary. You only really need him to tank or to just feed your star powers. Hopefully with these changes, Larry and Laurie will finally once and for all become balanced. Next on the list we have Angelo, and this is a very simple one. I want his HP to be increased by 10%. So instead of having 6000 HP, he would have 5400 HP. He is the sniper with the highest amount of HP, if my memory is not failing. Also, the hypercharge it is somewhat decent. His first power heals him a lot, and I just feel like he has a lot of advantage. And speaking of his first star power, the heal would also be reduced from 600 per second to 540 per second to match his new HP. He just never dies. It is very hard to kill him, and he can just keep those shots very easily. The only brawler that I feel like it somewhat counters him right now is actually Daryl, so maybe that's why he's just a tiny bit worse. But regardless, he is still a very good brawler, and he really deserves this nerf, honestly. Next on the list we have Barry, and I feel like this might be too much, but I feel like he absolutely deserves it, which is the ice cream duration will be reduced from 6 seconds to 5 seconds. To be honest, I feel like he just has way too much area control. He, like, with these, he can be good in almost every single mode except for knockout, and even there he has the passive where he can get the super by healing the teammates. Barry can be good in pretty much any scenario. Combine it with the gadget and the first star power, it is just way too strong. So to just simply cut all of that power by a bit, reduce the duration of the ice cream from 6 seconds to 5 seconds. Next we have Mortis and his hypercharge. It is absolutely crazy. So it will have these two nerfs. To start off, the hypercharge rate will be decreased from 50% to 40%. So now instead of taking only 2 supers to get one of the strongest hypercharges in the game, you would instead need 2.5 supers. On top of that, the hypercharge bonus damage would be severely decreased from 25% to 5%. He just deals way too much damage without hypercharge. Like, because of the bonus damage, you also heal more, and you can just do so much with the hypercharge. It is so easy to just team wipe after team wipe, and you get it so fast, and the damage buff just makes you heal so much. You don't even need to hit that many shots, but this needs to be done. Nerf more this hypercharge, please. Next on the list we have Byron, and this is a very simple one. I want his super cost to be increased from 9 ticks of poison to 10 ticks of poison. This is just to make so that instead of needing 3 ammo, you would now always need 4 ammo to get your super back. You get your super back so fast, you can cycle it so much, and Byron is so strong right now. Like, whenever I use him, it just, everything feels like very easy, especially if you have like decently good teammates. Everything will just work out. The supercharge is very fast, it is very versatile, and honestly it just should cost a bit more to get that awesome super. Next on the list we have Squeak, and I know that he just received the hypercharge, but the hypercharge sucks. So here is the following. Now his super, instead of charging 1/8 of the super, it will now charge 1/4 of the super. This means that his super will now charge as much super than his normal attack. This will make it so much easier to just recycle your supers, but also his super, it is so hard to hit. Like, you barely get one hit with that thing. Like, you need at least 2 to make a difference in your super charge rate. So at least with this buff, the super would be a lot easier to recycle, and this would also give a lot more utility to the hypercharge, because the hypercharge double the projectiles, double the charge rate, which is kinda good, honestly. So hopefully with this buff, Squeak will finally be some more viable in the meta. Also thanks to the hypercharge. Next on the list, another very straightforward one. Willow increased her super width, for Christ's sake, from 0.33 tiles to 1 tile. This means that instead of her super being as easy to hit as one single cold bullet, it will now be kinda as easy to hit as Lily's super. Because you just waste the super so easily. You need to get like the perfect angle or be just ridiculously close to the enemy to have value out of the super. Otherwise, Willow will honestly never fulfill her destiny. Doug. He needs the heal trait. The heal trait just got nerfed, so it makes even more sense to put this on Doug. I know that Doug heals himself as well, but so does Barry. So what is the deal with not giving him this trait? Is there some bug? I don't know, but all I know right now is that he absolutely deserves this heal trait, so there is no questions, just give him the goddamn trait already. Next on the list we have Charlie, and this might be a bit weird, but I actually want a tiny buff to her. After so many nerfs, just like what happens with most brawlers, she actually got pretty bad. I don't know very well when did that happen, but it all seems to have happened like after the last change, so let's revert half of that. Now the damage will be reverted back to 1600 damage. Honestly, her DPS is pretty good, but only in close range, and in close range against a Clancy, you are dead for sure. So hopefully with these tiny buffs, Charlie will be somewhere more viable in the meta, because right now it just feels like she doesn't really have that big of a place. Next on the list we have Lily, and even though I don't think that she really needs a nerf, because everything seems good but not broken so far, her first gadget still needs to be fixed. So now the first gadget will have a 1-second delay before actually activating the gadget, so no more just using this gadget to just get away like a free out of jail pass. That's not how life works. And now on top of that, the cooldown of the gadget only starts decaying after you have gotten out of the Shadow Realm. Because even though this gadget might not be that broken in like 3v3 modes, it is for sure very strong in Showdown. Like in Showdown it is very strong, and these two nerfs should kind of fix that. So hopefully with these changes, Lily's first gadget, it is no longer broken. Next on the list we have Clancy, and he must be nerfed. His first gadget, the bonus tokens, have to be reduced from ×2 to ×1.5. I know that it kinda makes a bit of a problem with his gadget design overall, but that's so sad. Oh my god. Yeah, this gadget needs to be nerfed regardless. And also his second star power, instead of giving him 3 ammo, it will now instead give him 2 ammo. It is kind of tiny nerf on the gadgets, but it will for sure help him out. And now his third level will no longer give him bonus recharge rate, because that makes his super way too strong. The super is still broken. So hopefully with this tiny nerf, the super will no longer destroy everything on its path. How crazy is that? Next on the list we have Crow, and I want the following buffs because he has been severely nerfed in the past. His first star power, instead of reducing the damage by 15%, it will now reduce the damage by 20%. 15% damage reduction nowadays, it is but a scratch honestly. Like you can't really do anything. Like 15% less damage to a Clancy, it's just making him less tiny bit broken. It's useless sometimes. And also his second gadget, instead of slowing enemies down for 2 seconds, it will now be for 2.5 seconds. So now it will have a tiny bit more control with the second gadget. On top of that, and this is the big one, his super cost will be decreased from 14 shots plus 1 tick of poison to 11 shots plus 1 tick of poison. So now you will be jumping a lot more around the map. This also means that you can charge your hypercharge a lot more. And obviously if you can charge your hypercharge a lot more, means that you're a lot stronger in highs, and because of that, he needs a 2 tiny nerfs to the hypercharge. The hypercharge bonus damage will be reduced from plus 25% to plus 5%, just to make it not broken. It needs to happen. All of the buffs are great and Crow desperately needs them, but the hypercharge cannot be that strong after all of these buffs. Next on the list we have Meg, and even though Meg is no longer has broken because of a massive 12% damage nerf, she will forever be strong because guess what, she has 2 lives. How can you beat that? So because of that, the mecha still needs a fair amount of nerfs. So to start off, I want the reload time of the mecha to be increased from 1.1 seconds to 1.5 seconds. This is one of the things that was changed after Meg's rework that no one really talked about, because back in the days, it used to take quite a fair bit to get your ammo, and now you can just get it so fast. Like you can just always keep so much pressure with that robot, even though you have a bazillion of projectiles. Like now you can no longer apply as much pressure. And speaking of pressure, now your super will take literally double the projectiles to get. Instead of needing 15 projectiles, now you will need 30 projectiles. And for the record, you you shoot per ammo 16 projectiles, so you only need 2 ammo to get your super. And also, the super should be a tiny bit more powerful, honestly, and this is the only buff that I'll give to her, but now the super damage will be increased from 3400 to 4080. This is just to bring a little back of old mech that, honestly, the super damage is not really that great. It just feels like a boring extra attack. It should definitely have some power, and also increasing the projectile cost of the super by that much should kind of fix it. And now let's actually talk about Meg herself. Now the super animation will be increased from 1 second to 1.5 seconds. This game needs more interruptible animations. Frank, it is literally the only super animation that can be considered interruptible. People should remember to interrupt Meg's super, or maybe kill her before she goes to the super. It is such an interesting thing that never happens almost. I think that this only happened to me once per month or something, and it's always a funny thing to remember. And increasing the animation duration should definitely help with that. And lastly, now whenever you respawn into the mecha, instead of respawning with a whopping 3 ammo, you only respawn with 1 ammo. You respawn with 1 ammo when you're outside of the mecha, and now you respawn with 1 ammo when you're inside the mecha. Makes perfect sense to me. Next on the nerf list, we have Chester. And honestly, even though he's the only title I have, literally, I feel like he needs a nerf. Chester, since he got that star power rework, he has just been crazy. Your damage, it is now so much more consistent. It is so great, honestly. It is very good, for real. And honestly, that versatility, I feel like part of it comes because he has so much HP. Chester, before getting the star power rework, he had 2 HP buffs, and this is bringing him back to that previous state before the HP buffs. And at the same time, Chester is one of the tank counters with the most HP. Him by himself, combining it with the healing super, he is practically a tank, honestly. He can tank so much and deal so much damage, and he has an amazing burst damage potential, and all of his supers, except for the slowing one, have some sort of utility that are honestly very good. So with this tiny nerf, I just hope to reduce a tiny bit Chester's versatility. And finally we have Kit. I want kind of a rework actually. His heal when he's attached to someone will be completely changed. Now, instead of healing 10% of your ally's HP, so if you're healing a Frank, you'll be healing 1340 per second. Now, you would only heal constantly 600 HP. So this would not make Kit with tanks so broken, and it would give a bit more value to his second gadget without making it broken, honestly, because you can just heal so much and it is so annoying. And reducing it to 600 makes Kit better with low HP brawlers and not as strong with the high HP brawlers. Hopefully this will balance him out. And there you have it, all of the emerging balances that I feel like Brawl Stars desperately needs right now. I know that this was not as large as my last video, but this is just the bare minimum that needs to happen in my perspective. So, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see ya on the next video.